Who won the Super Bowl in 2015? Who played in the Super Bowl in 2015? Who was the halftime entertainment at the Super Bowl in 2015? Don't Google it. This is Randy with the Living Well Blueprint. I talk about how to age in a time when we're living longer than ever, and the fact that we have to reimagine what it looks like today and how we prepare for the 3 to 4 decades we have ahead of us. And one of the pillars I live by is be strong, and that has several components. The obvious is physical strength, physical capacity, but I also talk about being spiritually strong, emotionally strong, and mentally or intellectually strong. And that means guarding and protecting and maintaining our mental health. Now, that may seem like an odd question. And what's interesting is hopefully you did not Google it. But 30 years ago, if I was asked that question, of course it wouldn't be the Super Bowl of 2015, but of those same questions for some earlier date, there would be no way to come up with that answer other than to have a conversation. It would spark a debate. Maybe I would have to collect a bunch of people. Maybe I would have to call some people. I'd have to poke a guy down the hall in my dorm at college. What have you. It would have sparked this dynamic interchange where we were starting to throw teams out. We had to retrieve some memories and we had to speculate and we had to go through that series of teams and come up with maybe one potential one, and somebody else would note, no, that was the year before. The point is there would be a lot of social connection. There'd be a lot of mental gymnastics, right? We'd be exercising our recall. We'd be posing questions, having diversions. That question would lead to other questions. It would spark new debates, new conversations. And then if we found the answer, there would be a little bit of a celebratory feel, like a sense of elation and joy. I'm not saying things were better back then, because they weren't. They were different. But as we progress, as we advance with technology and with modern life, you can look back and see attributes that wouldn't hurt to retain. And this is an example of that. Nicholas Carr wrote an article several years ago called, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" He spun that into a book called The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Your Brain. And this was not an anti-technology screed. He wasn't saying we shouldn't use the internet. He was simply trying to point out things that we should be aware of as we go deeper and deeper along this path in the use of technology. And that was one of those examples, was the fact that for all of time before the internet, these kinds of questions sparked a dynamic social interchange. It sparked connection. It sparked deeper questions. It created diversions. If you could think about the experience of maybe you've rummaged through a box of old mementos or old photos and you were looking for something in particular, and in that process you found all kinds of other things that sparked new memories and new conversations, and it was just sort of this joyous experience. We used to have that in exploring questions like this. And what we have now is we Google it, or we turn it over to chat. We simply pick up our phone, type it in, get the answer. No joy, no elation, no conversation. There's something lost in that. It's essentially a turning over of our memory, turning over all of that mental exercise to our technology. And again, don't get me wrong, technology, amazing. Okay, transformational in our lives. But as we're going, we have to recognize, especially in light of longer lives, that we have to maintain our mental capabilities. Just like you exercise your body, just like you work your muscles to retain their capacity to do the things you want them to do, we have to do the same with our brain. And that means using it in ways that might feel uncomfortable, that don't seem maybe necessary, but they provide a benefit because they're stretching, they're molding, they're working our brain in ways that help it retain its plasticity, to help it encourage cellular growth, and it keeps it spry and useful. You know, it's interesting because many of my kids have this disinclination to Google things. Sometimes we're having dinner and we'll be discussing something, trying to remember a certain movie title or a book or a song. And it's funny because my inclination is to Google it. Let's find the answer. And the feedback I get sometimes I found interesting, and it was unsettling at first, and now I'm on board, was, we were connected in a conversation. We were looking at each other, we were exchanging ideas, we were laughing, we were joking, and what I wanted to do is disconnect from that so I could get an answer. When they don't really need the answer. Their joy is in that conversation. And if the answer comes, that's fine. And if the answer doesn't, that's fine. And at first that was uncomfortable for me. But the more I sit in that, I've tried to practice that more and more on my own. And simply being comfortable with not knowing. And that's what I want to challenge you with today. As we continue to exponentially turn over our attention, our thoughts, our ideas, everything to technology, which again, I'm not saying not to do, but guard something, withhold something, retain some of that capacity for yourself. And this is the one thing I ask you to do. Next time somebody asks you a question, next time you are trying to recall, who sang that song? When did that movie come out? Who played in the Super Bowl? Don't look it up. Let it sit. Explore. See where your mind goes. Learn to be comfortable with not knowing. And again, enjoy the process. That allows the brain to go places maybe it hasn't gone. You're going to stretch and pull and perhaps discover things or recall things that you thought you'd lost or they'd just been lying dormant. So give yourself that space. Again, work that brain like you would any other muscle. Stretch it. This is Randy Erler with the Living Well Blueprint. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.